Welcome to the third day of Selenium C# training. So on the very first day, we just discussed the basics of Selenium only, the basic C# concepts, the brief history of Selenium and how can you install Visual Studio and all everything, right? And then yesterday we discussed the concept of static and non-static, as well as how do you create an object, what is the difference between object and object reference, and that's it, right? And then today we'll see how do you create an interface, what is an interface, and how interfaces can be used in Selenium, right? So how can you do that? So we'll be discussing that on the very on the today. Hold on. Yes, Gagan, I have started with the class. Sorry. Please mute your mic. Sorry, please connect your microphones. Now, before I start with my class, I'll just yesterday we were discussing the drivers, how to initialize the different browsers, right? And then we have seen like the Firefox for in order to initialize the Firefox browser, we have this Firefox driver class with us. Similarly, for the Chrome browser, we have Chrome driver, and similarly for the IE browser, we have this Internet Explorer driver class. We just have to create the object of this, and then we can simply initialize the three different browsers. But then since I have already configured the settings of these driver classes inside my system, that was why I was not getting any error. But initially, for the very first time, if you just create the object of these driver classes, you'll get to see some errors. And what will those be errors be? Like, say for example, I want to initialize my Firefox driver class, right? So right now I have just directly created the object of my Firefox driver, and if I run my code, I will be able to see a blank Firefox browser initialized, right? But if you do it for the very first time, and if you see the console output, if you see this console screen as well, it says that it is initializing the Gecko driver, right? So for the Firefox driver, there is an exe that is named as gecko driver.exe that is required by us in order to initialize the Firefox browser, right? So for that, first of all, what we need to do is we go to the official website seleniumhq.org. Then you go to the download section. Then out here, hold on. Okay. And then over here, under the third party drivers, bindings and plugins, you have this Mozilla Gecko driver, right? You just simply click over here, the latest Gecko driver. Okay, the version being 0.23.0, right? So then according to your operating system, you can simply download the Gecko driver, the latest version. So since I'm using Windows 64-bit, so I'll be downloading this Gecko driver. The zip file will get downloaded. And what is, we have to pass this gecko driver.exe inside the constructor of our Firefox, right? Say suppose I create the object. Now for the Firefox driver, what we have to do is we have this Firefox driver service class with us. Firefox driver service is equal to Firefox driver service dot create default service, right? Hold on, and then inside this I need to pass the path of my driver, that is the gecko driver. So for the Firefox driver, this gecko driver.exe will be required by us, right? So it has been downloaded, and then now you will unzip it. Okay, so when you unzip it, you will get this exe file gecko driver.exe, right? So then next what you have to do is you have to pass the path of this gecko.exe inside this very particular command, right? So what I will do is I'll just take the path over here, and will pass the path of my gecko driver.exe followed by the name of the exe file that will be your gecko driver.exe, right? And then you can put at the rate symbol over here in order to avoid writing double slashes in your complete path. Yes, Gagan, can you hear me now?
Yes, it's better. So
Okay,
how much did I
please.
miss so far?
Like I have just started. I'm just explaining the concept. And today is the third class.
Okay. Maybe we'll take
Yeah.
park it offline. Once the class is done, I'll quickly check back with you.
Yeah, yeah, sure, yeah, sure. And please mute your microphone. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to pass the path of the gecko driver.exe. Okay. As you all know that we have to give double slashes when we are passing the path, right? So in C sharp, what you can do is you can even put at the rate symbol to avoid writing double slashes in your complete path. Okay. So I put at the rate symbol followed by the name of the exe file, and then service dot, even if you want to set the binary path of the Firefox browser, that also you can set, right? That is your Firefox browser would be installed in program files 86, then Mozilla Firefox, and then out here you will be having your firefox.exe. So you just take this path and pass it out here. Okay, and you give at the rate symbol over here, sorry, at the rate symbol, right? And then now you create the object of the Firefox driver class. Okay, and then inside this constructor you pass your service object which has your path of the gecko.exe file. Okay, you pass your driver service over here, right? So now if you run your code, since right now like earlier also my browser was getting launched, now also it will be launching a blank Firefox browser. But now, like for you guys, when if you're trying to run it for the very first time, you will have to pass these three commands, right? And then now one more thing over here. Now, since right now we are working with the latest Selenium version being 3.141.2, and the Firefox browser is also the latest one, right? If you check the version of my Firefox, it is 63 version, the quantum version, right? So then for the latest, like since like these three lines of code are basically we are using it for the latest Firefox browser, but for the previous Firefox, the older Firefox version, we were not writing these three lines of code. We were just creating the object of the Firefox driver, and it was initializing your Firefox browser, right? So this is actually being updated in the latest Firefox version. So let me just tell you, if you are working with the latest Selenium, that is your version 3.x, okay, then for that you will have to use the latest Firefox. You will have to use the latest Firefox. Okay, but if you are working with Selenium version 2.x, okay, then your Firefox version will go from 37 till 40. Then you will have to use the Firefox version 37 to Firefox 40, like any of 37, 38, 39, and 40. But if you are working with Selenium latest version, then latest Firefox will only work. Okay, so this is something you need to know. All right. Okay. So then one thing is either you set the path of the gecko out like this by writing these three lines of code, or else you can even set the path of this gecko inside the environment variable as well. How do you set the environment variable? You go to the properties of your system, advanced system setting, environment variable, and then out here you edit the path system variable. Okay, and then over here you give the path of your, you put a semicolon in the end, and you pass the path of the, sorry, the exe, the path of the gecko driver.exe file. Okay, so if I have already set the path of my gecko, that is, if you see, this is my path, like in my drivers folder I have the exe file, Okay, so I have already set the path in my environment variable. That was why I was not passing the path of my gecko like this in my Firefox driver service class. And similarly, the same goes for your Chrome driver as well. For the Chrome also, I will have to pass the path of my Chrome driver.exe inside the constructor. Right. If you see, if I show you in my online class in my drivers folder, I have this chrome driver.exe, right? So this exe also you can download from the official website of Selenium only. You go to the downloads, okay, and out here under the third party drivers, again you have this Google Chrome driver, and from here you can download the latest Chrome exe. The latest is Chrome driver 2.44. Okay, and you download Chrome driver. Windows 32-bit will easily work with Windows 64-bit as well. This is the version of the Chrome driver, not your Windows 32-bit or 64-bit, right? Or else Linux, or for the Mac as well we have this exes, right? So what you need to do is you simply download the exe from here, and then you pass the path of your exe inside the constructor over here, like I have passed the path for my gecko driver.exe. All right, so you give the path over here, and then, or else you can even set the path in the environment variable as well, like I just showed you right now. Okay, so now if you try you will be easily able to initialize the different browser, and same goes with the IE browser as well. For the IE also, you can download it from the official website again. Over here you have Internet Explorer driver server. Okay, so you can download the exe 32-bit. This is again your, not your Windows 32-bit, it is the IE version. Okay, so 32-bit Windows IE will also work with 64-bit Windows. Okay, so you can download the 32-bit Windows IE. You'll get the zip file, you extract it, and pass the path of the exe inside the constructor over here for the IE driver server. All right, so yes, Maya, is it clear? So now if you try again, I think you'll be able to launch the three different browsers. Yes, Maya, is it clear? Okay. All right. Now coming back to our next topic, what is an interface? Right. So now, since right now, as we all have seen, we were just talking about these different drivers, Firefox driver, Chrome driver, IE driver, Opera driver, all the different drivers, right? Now the question which arises is, everything has a driver, whether it is your Firefox driver, Chrome driver, IE driver, Opera driver, everything has driver. So will you be learning these driver classes separately? If I have to work upon, say, Firefox driver, will the commands and approach be different than if I have to work on the Chrome driver? Will I have to create the object of each and every driver? What if a single script I want to run on multiple browsers? So how can it be done? How this will be addressed? Well, this can be easily achieved under the concept of interfaces. For example, if you go to any bookstore, you see the front cover, you see the front and the back cover of the book, and then you easily judge like what that book is all about. Restaurant, and you order food. How the food tastes, you don't know, right? You just see the menu, you order something, and you'll after that you'll get your food. So menu is like an interface which tells us what that particular menu will be offering, what that particular restaurant will be offering to us. Similarly, interface describes what project will do, what all commands and features will be there in the project. So it all comes under the interfaces. For example, similarly coming to our documentation only, if you go to the API docs of C Sharp, out here you will see so many interface present inside this documentation, right? We have so many interfaces. For example, taking any one interface, say I take the mouse interface. Now this mouse interface, it provides the methods representing some basic mouse functions, right? Basic functions like click, context click, double click, mouse up, mouse down, mouse move, some basic functions related to your mouse. Okay, so this is an interface. How it is implemented, we don't know. It just describes the functionalities, and like we will be using all these functions. If I have the requirement, I will be using this click function. How it all happens, we simply don't know. We will just be making use of these functionalities. Okay, so interface helps us know what the system does. For example, of your system, the keyboard of your system, it provides the interface between the buttons. You press the buttons and something happens on the screen. How it happens, we don't know. Similarly, the same is there in C Sharp as well. We have interfaces in C Sharp also, right? Say, for example, let me create a new project. Say day 3. Okay, and then say I have to create a new project, right? So what I'll do is, sorry, I create a new project, okay, and then what I'll do is say I'll add an interface inside it, right? So right click, add new item, and then you add an interface, select interface, right? Say for example, I add a phone interface. Right now, what is an interface? First of all, the first point is inside an interface, you only have function declaration. You only have function declaration. There is no implementation of the function. No implementation. You can only you can only declare a function. You cannot implement. You cannot define that function inside an interface. For example, coming like for example, this phone interface, a phone interface, like say phone has two properties, property of call and text, right? So then what I'll have is like as I told you, it will only have the function declaration, right? Oh, sorry. Okay. So we'll only declare a function named call. Similarly, it has another property to text. Right, so I have another property, text property, call and text. So these are the two properties, right? So what happens is if a layman looks at this interface, he will easily understand what a phone interface is offering to us. That is the two properties, call and the text property. Right. So as I told you, it can have only function declaration. If I try to implement it, no, I cannot do so. You see, I have like the error started coming below this call keyword with the message. It says naming rule violation. These words must begin with uppercase character. Okay. If I say declare it as an uppercase, then also I get an error. It says interface members cannot have a definition. You cannot define the function inside an interface, as I just told you, the first point, right? So you can just declare a function inside an interface. Secondly, the next point is you cannot print anything inside an interface. That goes with the very first point, since if I cannot define any interface, define a function, I cannot print anything. I can simply directly cannot write console.writeLine and print anything over here. No, I cannot do so, right? This is not possible inside an interface. All right. Then thirdly, the next point is no public access specifier. Rather, no any specifier. You cannot have any specifier. Like these members are public by default only. If you try to make them as public, you will again get the error. It says the modifier public is not valid for this item. Okay, so no public access specifier. These methods are public by default. Then lastly, you cannot declare fields inside an interface as we can do so in the class. In the class, I can declare the field, like say for example int x, right? But inside an interface, I cannot do so. If I try to initialize any field, right, say int a is equal to 100, I cannot do so. Interfaces cannot contain fields, right? So this is again not possible. Right. So these are some of the properties of an interface. First is you can only declare the function. You cannot define the function inside an interface. Then you cannot print anything inside an interface. Then there is no public access specifier. These methods are public by default only. You cannot externally define them as public. That is not possible. Similarly, you cannot even declare the interface. Okay, interface can be declared as public, but not the methods inside an interface as public. Okay, and then lastly, you cannot declare the fields inside an interface as we can do so inside the class. Okay, so these are some of the properties of an interface. Now, say for example, I have a class. I declare a new class inside my project. Say it is your Google Nexus. Okay, I have a class named Google Nexus. Now, Google Nexus is a phone, right? It is a phone. So it will also have the functionality of calling and texting, right? So what we can do is, what we will be doing is, we will be again declaring the two function call and the text function. Call and the text function over here in my Google Nexus class as well, right? And then we'll be implementing those functions. Now what happens is, rather than declaring the two function again, we have already declared them inside the phone interface. So we can simply implement this phone interface, right? This can be done. So how do you implement the phone interface? You put a colon followed by the name of the interface. That is your phone interface, right? And then when you implement any interface, the most important thing is you will have to implement the functions declared inside the interface. If you don't implement these functions that are declared inside the interface in the class which is implementing the interface, then you will get the compile time error. You see, it says the Google Nexus class, it does not implement the interface member text, right? And similarly, the two methods have to be implemented. It is mandatory if you are implementing the in any interface inside the class. Sorry. Okay, so then what will I have to do is, I will have to implement. So either I can manually write the two functions, the call and the two functions, and the another function, that is your text function. Okay, so now you see that the error has gone. Okay, and then you can implement it according to your requirement, like say Google Nexus calling. Okay, and similarly Google Nexus texting. Okay, so you can implement it according to your requirement, according to the different scenarios, right? So then what happens is, the most important thing is, if you are implementing, you will have to implement the members as well. Similarly, say suppose I have another the class with me. Say it is your iPhone class. Now iPhone is also a phone. It will also have the two properties, call and the text property, right? So why to declare them again in my iPhone class? What I'll do is I'll simply implement the phone interface over here as well. Okay, so then since if I am implementing, I will have to implement the functions as well. So either, as I just told you, either you can just write the two functions manually, since right now we have like two functions only, a very small function. If you have multiple functions and if you want to implement all those functions, then or else what you can do is you hover your mouse over here, you click on this yellow bulb icon, okay, and it says implement the interface, and then the two methods, rather all the methods would be implemented automatically, right? So you have public void call, and then out here you implement it according to your functionality, that is say iPhone calling, okay, and then you have iPhone texting. Okay, so what actually is happening is, like say for example, right now we have two classes with us. One is your Google Nexus class, which has the two properties, call and the text property. Similarly, we have another class with us, iPhone class. Again, it also has the two properties, call and the text property. Right. So then what is actually happening? And then we have one interface with us, that is your phone interface, which actually has two properties. Okay, so first comes your interface, then you have the two classes, right? Now like we have the phone interface call and the we have the phone interface which has two properties, call and the text prop properties, right? Now like since now what is the basic requirement of creating the interface? If you can directly declare the two functions and implement the function inside the class, why are we actually creating this interface? What is the need of creating an interface? What is actually happening is you first of all create the phone interface, you declare the two functions, and then the two classes implementing the interface are easily able to access the two functions, call and the text function, in the two respective classes, right? But so then why, what is the need of this interface? We can simply remove this phone interface, right, and can directly create the two classes, Google Nexus and the iPhone class. Why have we created this phone interface? It is because, say for example, if tomorrow a new class comes into your project, say it is your Samsung class. Now Samsung is also a phone, we all know. It will also have the two properties, call and the text property. So if a class is implementing any interface, if a class is implementing any interface, then automatically it will be understood by any layman that fine, it will surely contain the two properties, call and the text property. So rather than creating the same function again and again in all the classes, we can create one interface and all the classes can simply implement that interface. Implementation, no doubt, implementation will be different. How a Nexus phone calls and how the iPhone calls and how the Samsung phone calls, that would be different. But it will have to implement all those functions that are present inside the interface. Plus, it can have its own additional functions as well. Like say for example, Google Nexus phone has some additional property inside it. Okay, so it can be present inside the Google Nexus class. But these are your common properties which will be present for sure in all the phones, call and the text. The name of the function will have to be same in all the implementing classes. Right. Similarly, the interfaces are present in Selenium as well. Like just now I explained you, there is like we have just discussed the mouse interface. Right. And the most important being the most important interface being uh hold on, WebDriver interface. The whole Selenium revolves around this WebDriver interface only, the most important interface. Okay, and all your driver classes, that is your Firefox driver, the Chrome driver, the IE driver, Safari, all the driver classes are implementing this WebDriver interface. Okay, like say for example, like right now out in this C# documentation, it is not clearly described that all the driver classes. Hold on, let me just show you the Java documentation. If I show you the Java docs, and out here I'll show you the WebDriver. Okay, here's your WebDriver, and then you see that all the implementing classes, Chrome driver, Edge driver, Firefox, IE, Opera, Safari, all these driver classes are implementing this WebDriver interface, right? This is not actually described in the C# documentation, it is actually there. Okay, so yeah. Fine. So this is what is all about the interface. Now, same thing, like say for example, if I show you this WebDriver interface, you see these are all the classes, URL function. If you want to navigate to a particular URL, this URL is actually present in the WebDriver interface, right? Similarly, if you want to close the browser, if you want to find any element, if you want to get the title of the web page, right? So this is actually present inside your WebDriver interface. And since the driver classes, the Firefox Chrome driver classes are implementing this interface, that is why we will be able to access these properties, these methods of the web driver inside the driver classes. Okay, all right. Now coming to the usage of the interfaces, what are the uses of an interface? For example, the first thing is the functions are same in all the implementing classes. The call and the text function. You declared the two function call and the text. These functions will be same in all the implementing classes. For example, you can see this WebDriver interface, right? The functions, like these are the functions declared inside your WebDriver interface, and same functions you will be easily able to access them with your driver classes as well: Firefox driver, Chrome driver, IE driver. Why? It is because the driver classes are implementing this WebDriver interface. Okay, now say for example, let us take a practical example. um, what we will do is, say suppose, okay, let me just sign out from my account. Okay, so then what happens is, like say for example, if I have this gmail.com, I go to gmail.com, right? And then what you have to do is, you have to log in into your Gmail account. That is, you have to navigate to Gmail. You enter your username, you click on the next button, you enter your password, and then you will be able to sign in into your account, right? So this is your script that you want to perform, and that too you want to perform it in all the three browsers: Firefox, Chrome, and IE. So how will you be doing that? You have to perform this in all the three browsers, right? So what I'll do is, let me just create a new class, say Gmail class, right? And we'll add a main function to it. Okay, we'll add a main function, and then, like say suppose I have a variable declared browser is equal to, say, Mozilla. I want to perform it on my Firefox browser, right? And then I'll keep a check over here. If this browser, if it equals Mozilla, then it should simply initialize the Firefox browser, right? So I'll create the object of my Firefox driver. Okay, hold on. Let me just add the Selenium DLLs inside this project. Right click, manage NuGet packages. We'll add the WebDriver DLL. Okay, so now if we import, you say openqa.selenium.firefox, right? So I say that if my browser is equal to Firefox Mozilla, it should initialize your Firefox driver, right? And then I'm not passing the path of my gecko driver since I have already set it in the environment variable, right? So this browser right now you have kept it as a Mozilla. If you want to run it on the Chrome browser, you can even initialize the value as Chrome, or it is your IE or any other browser, right? So right now I am hard coding my browser parameter. You can even pass it like tomorrow when we will be reading it from some external file. We'll see how we can read it from the external Excel file. Okay, okay, uh, right. And then yes, and then similarly, I say else if browser equals Chrome, then it should initialize your Chrome browser. And we'll import the class using openqa.selenium.chrome, right? And similarly, else if the browser equals IE, then it should initialize your Internet Explorer driver. Internet Explorer driver. And similarly, we'll import the class for this as well. Okay, right. And then you have to pass the path of the exes or else you set it in the environment variable, right? So then according to the type of browser, you will be in like that very particular browser would be initialized. Like after you initialize your browser, next what you have to do is you have to navigate to gmail.com, right? You have to navigate to gmail.com. So then what we do is like say, let me just actually create the object, say if Firefox fd is equal to this, right? After I initialize, then again I say that fd dot url is you pass the url, that is you have to navigate to gmail.com, right? Similarly for the Chrome driver as well, and then you say similarly cd.url is you navigate to gmail.com, right? And same thing goes with your IE browser as well, that is Internet Explorer driver IE is equal to this, and then you navigate to ie.url is you navigate to gmail.com. Okay, right. So after you, first of all, you open the browser, you launch your browser, then you navigate, right? So you see that the same command I'm writing again and again in all the else statement. Again, after this, after I navigate, what will I have to do is I have to enter my username, right? So I will next fire the command as a driver dot find element, sorry, find the element, find me the element with that very particular ID, and then we'll extract it and then work upon it, right? Same thing, the same piece of command, the same login username field I will be finding through the Chrome driver as well. Similarly, I'll be finding it with the IE driver as well. So don't you think you are writing the same piece of code again and again? Okay, this command also you see I'm writing it again, the URL statement, right? So now if you see that this URL function is not present in your Chrome driver class, or it not present in your Firefox or IE driver. This is actually present in your WebDriver interface. If you have carefully noticed your WebDriver interface, URL function is actually present inside this interface. And since these driver classes are implementing the interface, that is why we are able to access the URL function from from these driver classes. Okay, right. So then what happens is we will not be actually doing it like this way. we have to remove the redundancy from our code, right? So what then we will have to do is, like, say for example, let me just explain you, coming back to the C sharp concepts now, let me just explain you the concept of interface inside C sharp, and then we'll switch back to Selenium again, right? So then what I will do is, like, say for example, I have this program.cs class file with the main function. Now out here what I'll do is, let me just create the object of my phone interface. Phone p is equal to new phone. This is the name of my interface. Phone is your interface, right? So then what you're doing is you're trying to create the object of the phone interface, but then I am getting the error over here. Cannot create an instance of the interface phone. No, you cannot create the interface of, the object of an interface. Why? So the rule number one is, the first thing is, we cannot create the object of an interface, since interface is nothing. It is just the skeleton. If you see inside the interface, we are just declaring the functions, nothing else. You don't have any fields declared, you don't have anything, you don't have any your logic, function logic, nothing you have inside an interface. So you will rather achieve nothing creating the object of an interface. It is just the skeleton. So why to create the object of an interface? Right. Rather, what we will be doing is, we will be actually creating the object of the classes. Google Nexus class. Similarly, the iPhone class. Right. iPhone class. I will be creating the object of my iPhone class. And from these classes, you can access the two functions, the call and the text function. And similarly with the iPhone class, call and the text function from the iPhone class. Okay, and then now if you run your code, okay, let me just comment this Gmail main, or else what I'll do is, I'll make my startup class as my program.cs. Save the changes, and then now if I run, you see that it prints Google Nexus calling text, Google Nexus text, iPhone calling, and iPhone texting. Right, so it just prints the output of the two classes. Okay, fine. All right. Now next is, and then as I told you, these classes will have to, like, if your class is Google Nexus and if it is implementing the interface, it will have to implement the two functions, rather all the functions declared in an interface, plus it can have its own additional properties as well. For example, say Google Nexus phone has an additional property of, say, Google Maps. This is not present in, say, every phone, but it is present in the Google Nexus class only, right? So we declare it inside the Google Nexus class only, and then you implement it accordingly, right? So then if you try to access it from your Google Nexus class g dot Google Maps, we can easily access it. But if we try to access it from the iPhone class, the same Google Maps function over here, no, we cannot simply do that. Why? It is because this Google Nexus is not declared in your iPhone class or inside your phone interface. It is just declared in your Google Nexus class only. Right? The same goes with your iPhone class as well. If an iPhone has any additional property, any extra functionality, then it will be declared in your iPhone class only, not inside your phone interface, because that will not be common among all the phones. Right? So a class can have its additional functionalities, plus it will have to have the functionalities present inside the interface. This is mandatory. Right. Okay. So then the first point goes the same as, you cannot declare create the object of the interface. Rather, you will have to create the object of the classes. Right. Okay. Similarly, The next is, okay, so right now I am creating the object of my class as iPhone I is equal to new iPhone, right? Or else you can even create the object of the class as, say, phone P1 is equal to new Google Nexus. Okay, so you can even create the object of the class like this or like this as well. That is, out here what we are doing is interface reference is equal to the object of the class. Okay, interface reference is equal to the object of the class. This is your phone interface and you are making it equal to the class, the object of the class which is implementing the interface. So, right, so this is another way of creating the object of the class. Right.